The crimson soil of Sereth crunched beneath Marcus's Webb's boots as he climbed the ridge, portable scanner humming in his hands. 3 months on this alien world, and he still caught his breath at the twin suns setting on the horizon, painting the copper-colored sky in shades of amber and gold. The scanner beeped, promising mineral deposits, just like the orbital surveys suggested. Marcus knelt, brushing away loose pebbles to expose the rock face beneath. His team back at base camp would be pleased. This could extend their research grant by another year. He almost didn't hear the scream, almost missed it beneath the wind, whistling through the canyon. But something in that sound, high, terrified, utterly desperate, made him freeze. Made him remember another scream in a hospital room back on Earth. When the doctors told him there was nothing more they could do for Sophie, Marcus stood, scanner forgotten. Down the slope, perhaps 200 meters away, he saw them. Riders in bronze armor on 6-legged mounts, circling something small and silver near the ancient stone ruins his team had been warned to avoid. The local Seri people considered those ruins sacred, limits to outsiders. Another scream tore through the air. Protocol was clear. The Seri had their own conflicts, their own laws. Earth observers were to document, never interfere. Marcus had signed the agreement himself, understood the reasoning. First contact protocols existed for good reasons. Then the child fell. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 by human standards. Though Marcus knew Seri aged differently. Silver robes tangled around her legs as she scrambled backward up the rocky incline, her lavender skin pale with fear. For riders advanced on her. Weapons raised crossbows loaded with bolts that gleamed wet and dark in the fading light. Marcus saw Sophie's face. Not this alien child's face, but Sophie's, his daughter, running through their garden, silver dress billowing, laughing. Sophie in the hospital bed, asking when she could go home. Sophie in the ground, while Marcus stood in the rain, unable to feel anything but the crushing weight of failure. His legs moved before his brain caught up. Hey! The word ripped from his throat as he sprinted down the ridge, rocks sliding beneath his boots. Stop. The lead rider's helmet turned toward him. Marcus saw the crossbow pivot, tracking his movement. Everything slowed, the mechanical precision of trained warriors, the child's violet eyes wide with terror. The bronze tips of 4 bolts converging on where she stood. He dove. His shoulder hit the child's waist, both of them tumbling behind a rocky outcrop. Marcus felt the impact of stone against his ribs, heard the child's gasp as the air knocked from her lungs. Then white-hot agony exploded in his back. The bolt had punched through his thermal jacket, aired itself between his shoulder blades. But it wasn't the impact that made him scream, it was what came after. Ice flooded his veins, spreading from the wound through his chest cavity like liquid nitrogen. His heart stuttered, stopped, restarted in a rhythm that felt fundamentally wrong. Cold, so cold it burned. The child was crying against his chest, small hands gripping his jacket. Marcus tried to speak, to tell her it would be okay, but his jaw wouldn't move. The cold had reached his throat, his brain. Turning his thoughts sluggish and strange, he could still see the sky above them. The twin suns bleeding orange across the horizon, but his vision was narrowing, darkening at the edges. Sound became muffled hoofbeats. Voices shouting in the clicking language he'd been studying, but couldn't speak. Hands pulled at him, pulled at the child. Through failing vision, Marcus saw her, a woman in bronze armor, face uncovered. Skin the deep lavender of evening sky with darker patterns traced along her cheekbones. She was beautiful and terrifying, and she was screaming, not at the attackers. At him, her expression wasn't gratitude. It was fury, pure and incandescent. She wrenched the child from Marcus's arms with enough force to make the girl cry out. Held her at arm's length as if checking for contamination. The child reached back toward Marcus, sobbing words he couldn't understand, but the woman turned away, barking orders. Marcus's last coherent thought was confusion. He'd saved her. Why was everyone so angry? Then the ice reached his brain, and consciousness shattered into fragments. When awareness flickered back, it came in pieces. Stone ceiling carved with spiraling patterns that hurt to look at. Voices speaking too fast, words blurring together. Hands moving over his body, he couldn't feel them, but he could see their shadows at the edge of his vision. The poison should have killed him in minutes. His biology is different. It's frozen his systems instead of stopping them. Captain Vesa demands we keep him alive. The child is unharmed, but the shame, the words meant nothing. Everything was cold. So cold his thoughts moved like glaciers, barely advancing, crushing everything beneath their weight. Darkness again. When Marcus woke next. Waking was the right word, he was somewhere else entirely. A vast hall carved into living rock, walls of polished stone that seemed to absorb light from floating braziers overhead. He lay on a platform etched with the same spiraling patterns as the ceiling. Channels cut into the stone glowing with faint blue luminescence. He could see everything with perfect clarity. The vaulted ceiling 50 feet above. The rows of similar platforms stretching into shadow, most holding only bones wrapped in ceremonial cloth. The figures moving around him, robed elders with faces lined by age and the faded mentation that marked advanced years among the Seri. He could see all of this. But he couldn't move. Couldn't blink. Could barely breathe. One shallow gasp every few minutes that barely stirred his chest. The human lives. One elder spoke. Voice like wind through hollow reeds. The healers confirm his metabolism has adapted to the venom. Frozen, not dead. Then let him freeze permanently. Marcus recognized that voice, the armored woman Vesa. Seal him here. Store him with the ancestors. Forget him. We cannot. Another elder, female, with elaborate silver patterns traced on her skin. He saved Princess Nira. Our law is absolute. A life debt must be honored. He contaminated her. Vesa's voice cracked with emotion. His alien hands touched royal blood. She is unharmed. The physicians confirmed it. Silence fell like snow. Marcus watched through eyes that wouldn't close, understanding everything, feeling nothing. He was a problem they couldn't solve, a stain they couldn't wash away. Vesa stared at him, then at the elders. Her expression was unreadable behind the formal mask of duty. Fine, she said quietly. Then her voice dropped to something only he might have heard, if he could truly hear. If you wish to be remembered, human, you will be forever frozen in our shame. She left. The elders dispersed. Healers approached with containers of the same glowing blue substance that filled the channels in his platform, began painting it onto his skin in thin layers. It burned cold where it touched. Marcus tried to scream. Nothing came out. One healer leaned close, an older male with kind eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered. The preservation solution will keep your body stable, but it cannot give you peace. You will remain aware. Try to think of distant things. Try to let your mind drift from your body. It is the only mercy we can offer. Then they sealed him in something like glass, grown from the platform itself, transparent and impossibly smooth. Marcus's last clear view was the vaulted ceiling above and the shadows of healers walking away. Leaving him alone in the cold blue glow, he tried to drift, tried to think of Sophie, of Earth, of anything but the crushing weight of paralyzed time stretching endlessly ahead. But awareness remained, sharp and cold as the poison in his veins and in the doorway. Half hidden in shadow, a small figure watched. Princess Nira, her violet eyes fixed on his frozen form. Her lips moved in words he couldn't hear, but somehow understood. Thank you, sleeping guardian. Days blurred into weeks. Weeks into months. Marcus stopped trying to count after the first year, when the accumulation of identical days became an unbearable weight pressing against his frozen consciousness. The Hall of Ancestors was vast and silent. His platform stood among rows of others, but most held only bones wrapped in ceremonial cloth, honored dead of Seri nobility. Preserved according to ancient custom. Marcus was the only living occupant. Living was the right word for this half-existence between breath and death. The blue glow never changed. No sunlight penetrated this deep into the mountain. Time became something he carried without the ability to set down. An infinite burden that could never be shared or released. Sometimes attendants came to check the preservation solution levels. adjusting the flow in the channels carved into his platform. They never looked at him directly, as if his frozen gaze might contaminate them the way his touch had supposedly contaminated their princess. Sometimes, Princess Nira visited. She came alone at first, standing at a distance, speaking to him in her melodic clicking language. Marcus couldn't understand the words, but her tone was gentle, sad, apologetic. She grew taller with each visitor. Perhaps they simply came far apart. Months passing between them like heartbeats he could no longer feel. Once she brought a drawing, pressed it against the glass-like substance that encased him. A crude stick figure, with a bolt in its back, standing between a smaller figure and warriors with crossbows. She held it there for a long moment, violet eyes meeting his frozen stare, then carried it away. Captain Vesa never came, until she did. Marcus knew. Her footsteps before he saw her, the particular rhythm of her boots on stone. The confident stride of a warrior who'd walked these halls 1,000 times. It must have been a year since his entombment, perhaps longer. Time moved strangely when measured only by the patience of stone. She entered at night. When the attendants were gone and the hall held only silence and the faint hum of preservation systems, she stopped 3 meters away, arms crossed, studying him. "They tell me you're conscious," she said abruptly. "That your mind is intact, trapped in that frozen shell. I don't know if that's true or if the healers speak comfortable lies to ease their guilt."
Ow.
She paused, and Marcus would have held his breath if breath were something he controlled. "If you can hear me," Vesa continued, "I want you to understand something." She moved closer. Her reflection appeared on the surface that encased him, a ghost superimposed over his frozen face. She was beautiful, he realized distantly. Sharp features, amber eyes, a thin scar cutting through her left eyebrow like silver thread. "I hate you," she said clearly. "I hate that you saw my failure. I hate that you were faster, braver, more willing to die for a child who wasn't yours. I hate that I froze like a raw recruit while you, a scientist who studies rocks, ran toward crossbows without hesitation." Her hand touched the glass. "Just for a moment, I hate that I will carry this debt until I die. That Nira will carry it. That there is no possible repayment because you are neither truly dead nor truly alive." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "And I hate that when I watch the security recording. Trying to understand where I went wrong, I saw something that terrifies me." Marcus waited, trapped and silent. "You didn't hesitate," she breathed. "Not even for a heartbeat? You saw a child in danger and you ran. You didn't think about honor or duty or consequences. You just ran." She pulled her hand back. "I've been a warrior my entire adult life. I've won 47 individual combats. I've led campaigns that saved thousands. And in the single moment that mattered most, I froze." She laughed, bitter and hollow. "Meanwhile, you analyze rocks for a living, and you were the warrior when it counted." She turned toward the exit, then stopped. "The rebellion is growing. Warlord Kalen has taken 2 more provinces. The council thinks we might lose the capital within 5 years. She glanced back at him. "When it falls, and it will fall, I wonder what they'll do with you. Display you as a trophy? Shatter your case and let you finally die." She walked away, paused once more in the doorway. "If you can hear me, human, if there's any consciousness in there, I'm sorry. For your suffering, for all of it." And she was gone, and Marcus was alone again, with the weight of time and the ghost of her hand against the glass. She came back 3 nights later, then a week after that. Then it became a pattern, irregular, unpredictable, but constant as the blue glow that sustained him. Sometimes she stood in silence, and Marcus learned to read her moods in the set of her shoulders, the tilt of her head. Sometimes she spoke about tactical decisions, political maneuvering, the slow decay of her civilization under pressure from Kalen's rebellion. "Your people must think we're savages," she said one night, pacing before his platform. "Crossbows and swords while you have ships that cross the stars. But our world is poor in the metals you need for advanced technology. What little we have goes to agriculture, medicine. We chose food over weapons." She stopped, pressed her forehead against the glass. "Kalen has the northern mines now, building foundries. In another year, he'll have firearms. Crude, but effective, and we'll still be fighting with bronze." Her voice dropped. "Our scouts say he's moving on the eastern bridge at dawn. 2 days, maybe 3. Marcus wanted to respond, wanted to tell her that Earth had faced similar technological gaps and survived them. Wanted to say something, anything, to ease the desperation threading through her words. But he remained frozen. A silent witness to her? Unraveling. Months passed, years. Vesa aged before his unchanging eyes. The first gray hairs appeared at her temples, then spread like frost through the dark strands she usually bound back in a warrior's knot. The lines around her eyes deepened. Her movements became slightly stiffer, though she remained graceful, deadly. Still dangerous despite the passing years, she was still beautiful. Perhaps more so in the way that sunset is more beautiful than dawn, richer, deeper. Weighted with the knowledge of impermanence, the war worsened. She spoke of it in fragments that painted a picture of slow collapse. Lost provinces. Failed counterattacks. Refugees flooding the capital. Kalen had firearms now. Artillery. Something close to explosive rockets. The technological gap was closing in the worst possible way. "Nira wants to negotiate," Vesa said one night. She looked older than her years now, hair more silver than black. She's grown into a fine queen. Thoughtful, diplomatic, everything I'm not. She sat down. She'd started bringing a chair years ago, no longer able to stand through their entire conversations. "She remembers you. Calls you her sleeping guardian. Asked me once why we don't try to wake you." Vesa's smile was tired. "I told her your sacrifice earned you peace. But that's a lie, isn't it? You have no peace. Just eternal frozen awareness while I grow old talking to a man who can't answer back." Her hand found the glass again, that familiar gesture she probably wasn't aware she made. "I'm old, Marcus Webb. I don't know how many years I have left. The war has taken everything, my youth, my optimism, most of my friends. But I keep coming here because—" She paused, searching for words. "Because you're the only person who never judged me, never expected anything. You just existed, constant and unchanging while everything else fell apart." She stood slowly, joints audibly protesting. "Kalen is planning a final assault on the capital. Our intelligence is clear. He means to storm the palace, execute the royal family, establish himself as emperor. It will happen within the year." She looked at him with eyes that held depths of weariness Marcus had never seen before. "When it does, I want you to know something. You didn't save Nira from death that day. You've saved her for 30 years of life. 30 years of being loved and learning to love. 30 years of meaning." Her voice cracked slightly. "That's not nothing." She left. The hall returned to silence. Marcus thought about time, how humans measured it, how it felt different from inside versus outside a body. 30 years? Sophie would have been 37 now if she'd lived. An adult? Maybe married, maybe with children of her own. But Sophie was gone, and Marcus was here. And Nira was alive because of one moment of reckless courage or foolish instinct or whatever name you gave to a father's desperation, transferred onto a stranger's child. 30 years of meaning. It had to be enough. It was all he had. One night. Perhaps a year later, Marcus had long stopped tracking time with any precision. Vesa brought something with her. A small device, pre-fall human technology by the look of it, the casing battered and corroded from years of neglect. "We found this in your crashed shuttle," she said, turning it over in her hands. "Took our engineers 6 months to power it without destroying the data inside. Activated it." Light flickered across her weathered face. Then sounded a child's voice, high and sweet and painfully familiar. "Daddy, come back alive. Mommy says your mission is dangerous, but you promised you'd come home for my birthday. I'm making you a card, see? It has a rocket ship, and that's you inside, flying home to me." Vesa shut it off. Her hand was shaking. "That's why you ran." Her voice had gone soft, all the sharp edges smoothed away by understanding. "You saw her, your child, in Nira's face." She set the device down carefully beside his platform as if it might shatter. I researched your species. Your ship's records were badly damaged, but we recovered some personnel files. Sophie Webb, daughter, died 4 years before you left Earth. Cancer, 7 years old. She looked at him through the glass that separated living from frozen, present from past. You couldn't save her, so you saved ours. Silence filled the hall. Not empty silence, but thick with the weight of understanding finally achieved. I've been angry at the wrong person, Vesa said quietly. You didn't choose to shame me. You just saw a chance to not fail again. She touched the glass once more, her palm flat against it. I understand now. You're not a hero, Marcus Webb. You're just a father who got one more chance to do what fathers are supposed to protect a child. Any child, even at the cost of everything. She left the recording device beside his case. Sometimes on later visits she would play it. Sometimes she would just sit in silence. Her presence a strange comfort in the endless frozen nothing. And once, just once, Marcus felt something, not physical sensation, that was long gone, but a flicker of warmth beneath Vesa's palm on the glass, as if his body remembered in some cellular way what it meant to be touched with kindness instead of duty or shame. The years continued their patient march. Vesa's hair turned fully silver. The lines in her face deepened into canyons. But she kept coming, kept talking, kept maintaining. Her vigil over the frozen man who had saved her niece and inadvertently saved her from something worse than death, from being the warrior who froze when courage mattered most. And Marcus listened, trapped and aware, counting the seconds between her visits the way other men count heartbeats, each one precious because it meant he wasn't entirely alone in the frozen dark.